So last week, actual eunuchs walked the Victoria's Secret runway in New York City. I think this thing was like put on pause for a while. I think they were getting like attacks about the objectification of women or something like that. Well, no, I mean, that sounded bad. You shouldn't objectify women. But this is coming from the people who objectify and commodify women and now believe that men can be women. Anyways, the Victoria's Secret runway is back with two dudes who sliced off their penis. And now, reporting to you from the front lines of the decline of Western civilization, feminism has brought us to transgenderism, where now men can actually be female feminists, espousing the right of men to construct vaginoplasty, surgically altered vaginas so that they can usher women back under the thumb of the patriarchy? Welcome to the Seth Gruber Show. So that was the most sad and tragic introduction to the podcast I have ever done. Apparently, last week, Alex Consani and Valentina Sampoi, like, you know, by the way, like, who knows what their real names are, actually? You understand that? Do you remember the episode we did recently about the, like, transgender identifying child killer who murdered his stepson and is now asking Indiana taxpayer dollars to pay for his removal of his penis and a vaginoplasty? You remember that story? Okay. Like, it's so difficult to put these things into the English language for you, but that's what we do here at the Seth Gruber Show. Anyways, you recall that dude now wants to be called, I think it was like Autumn Corteleone or something. So these two dudes at the Victoria's Secret runway in New York City, who knows what their actual names are, actually, right? Do you understand how theological and religious the transgender mafia, alphabet mafia cult is? Like, you know how, like, religious they speak? Did you know that if a dude who now says he's a woman selects a new name and then changes his pronouns on his driver's license, if you call him his old name, and by his old name, I mean the name he was given on his birth certificate and that everyone referred to him forever as until he decided he wanted a female name, they call that dead naming. Dead naming. They're saying the old me is dead. Behold, all things have become new. Oh, wait a second. No, that's the Bible. The old me is dead. I've been born again. So I want all the stuff on my birth certificate to be changed. On my, you know, the thing when my first birthday, like I want all that stuff changed because this is the new me. It's like, oh, wait a second. That also sounds like Christianity. Like, it's all so religious. Okay. And that's why at the White Rose Resistance, everything we do is to wake up the church, prick the conscience of Christians, to wake up, see the battlefield for what it is, see the evil for what it is, and to offer an alternative, to speak boldly, to speak loudly, to speak proudly, to speak unashamedly about the truth, and to actually do the kind of activities it's going to take to retake the culture for life, for the future, for the family, for your children and grandchildren. This is one of the most insane videos that I've ever seen. There's two of them, actually. This was from last week in New York City at the Victoria's Secret runway. Lingerie over where my penis used to be. Okay, ready? These are two dudes. Play video. No, 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 no. I want to crawl into a hole and die. Oh, okay. So I don't know if I've told this story before to you guys, but I was actually at an event in California last year, and I met a dude that I did not know was a dude, okay? And I'm just saying that some of these surgical and social transitions have been so effective that, like, it's hard to know sometimes. And of course, that's their goal, right? The goal is to be so successfully transitioned that a dude could convince another dude to sleep with him because the him looks so much like a her. Like, it's the entire inversion of the natural order. Like, that's always been the goal. I hope you understand that, okay? Like, who knew that when Satan told Eve that God's holding out on you, for he knows that if you eat the fruit, then your eyes shall be opened. Our eyes are pretty wide open now, I guess. I guess wide open eyes means that you couldn't even know that the person you're talking to ain't a woman, but it's a dude. There have been some people who have so successfully, quote unquote, transitioned, meaning they've chopped off so much pieces of their flesh and used it to create other pieces of flesh that you wouldn't know. Now, just to get way too into the weeds than you'd probably like to, it's not so convincing the other way, if you know what I mean, okay? Especially if you're part of the free love movement and you don't care about God's plan for sexual intercourse and marriage, and you're just going to do you and you're going to sleep around. In that scenario, in that kind of sexually liberated culture, you would know pretty dang quickly, especially if it was a woman, okay? I guess what I'm trying to say, okay, PG-13 warning, don't listen to the Seth Gruber Show in your car with your children. It's not my fault. It's because we just talk about what's happening in the culture. Okay, I don't know how else to explain this stuff to you. A fake penis would probably be pretty easy to identify. That's so weird to have to say that, okay? I would guess that a fake vagina would also be very easy to identify. I would guess. But I think a fake penis would be a lot easier to identify. I guess what I'm saying is that even the illusion of gender fluidity and the religion of transgenderism can only trick you insofar as you're still wearing the veneer of a Victoria's Secret lingerie underwear. Okay, like, once the panties come off, I think transgenderism slaps itself in the face. I think once the panties come off, transgenderism exposes itself for the fraud that it is. Don't worry, we'll get into all of the philosophy and sociology and really theology behind the religion of transgenderism in just 1 second. But what we just watched was disgusting. And that second dude in particular, I think it's Valentina, who knows what his real name is, that was a pretty successful surgical transition. I mean, obviously, he's had skin moved around on his face, a lot of makeup. A lot of these dudes try to be really thin so that you don't see too many abs, because women don't have a ton of abs. And he's got some kind of fake breast thing going on. I mean, like, holy moly. Okay? I don't know how exactly to respond to that, but with all of the authority of science, the mainstream ecclesiastical institutions of our day will look you straight in the eye and say, that was a woman. That was a woman. I mean, what's one of the mantras of the transgender movement? They scream, trans women are women, right? You've seen the clips, right? We probably have it here. Trans women are women. What are they saying? They're saying that it's not that a dude can just identify as a woman. It's that the dude who identifies as a woman is a woman. No different than your mom or sister. Like, they actually are a woman, which of course assumes that your physical body, your body means nothing. It's completely irrelevant to your identity. By the way, if you're a feminist and you disagree with what you just saw, you don't think that that's right. Do you know what you're called? Have you heard this phrase? You're called a TERF. It means trans exclusionary radical feminist. You're a TERF. You're a TERF. Trans exclusionary radical feminist. Do you get it? You see, what makes you radical these days is if you're a feminist who doesn't believe that a man can be a woman, and you don't believe that men should be allowed to shower next to naked girls after a swim meet at a college campus. That's what makes you a radical feminist today. Now, 50 years ago, a radical feminist might have burned their bra, freed the nipple, and slept around at Woodstock. But and maybe they said, we don't need men. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. But today, radical feminism means that you don't believe that men can become women. That's what makes you a radical, trans exclusionary feminist today in 2024. But first, we want to thank our sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper Company. Every Life Diaper. Every life matters, and it took Every Life to realize we need a pro-life diaper company because almost all of the rest of the major diaper companies and baby brands support abortion, rhetorically or financially. Wait a second, why would you help subsidize and encourage murdering your clients that are required to sell your product? Because that's the woke mind virus, y'all. Okay, to rebuild a culture of life, you need to fight with your wallet, which means you need to shop in alignment with your values. Get your baby wipes and diapers from everylife.com. Everylife.com. Promo code Seth10. Use promo code Seth10 for 10% off your first order and let them know that we sent you. And in so doing, you support us here at the Seth Gruber Show and the White Rose Resistance. But more importantly, help us bankrupt pro-abortion, anti-family companies that put the culture of death on steroids, okay? Everylife.com, promo code Seth10. Make sure your nursery at your church, your local pregnancy center, and anyone in your family or friends who are having babies get their diapers from Everylife.com, promo code Seth10. Thank you, Every Life, for supporting the Seth Gruber Show. So if you're J.K. Rowling, if you're Naomi Wolf, who's like, for decades has been one of the most extreme pro-abortion defenders and activists and philosophers on the left. But she doesn't like the trans stuff. She also didn't like the mandatory mRNA requirements either. But now she's an enemy of the revolution because she's not willing to take feminism into its final iteration of transgenderism. She's a radical. She's hindering the revolution. She's an enemy of the revolution, actually. That's like, well, that escalated quickly. Do you ever feel like saying that when you're watching the news? I do. Oh, that escalated quickly. Of course, as we often say, it actually moved gradually and then quickly, then suddenly. What do I mean by this? The American Psychological Association has a pamphlet called Answers to Your Questions About Transgender People, Gender Identity, and Gender Expression. This is the APA, the American Psychological Association. And they say transgender is an umbrella term for persons whose gender identity, gender expression, or behavior does not conform to that typically associated with the sex to which they were assigned at birth. You've heard this phrase before, right? By the advocates of gender theory, that it's not, what you were born as. It's the gender you were assigned at birth. Assigned at birth? So a person's sex is merely assigned at birth. It's not innate to who they are. It's certainly not immutable. It's just assigned. And it could have been assigned the other way, I guess. How quickly have things escalated exactly that would lead us to men who sliced off their penis having Victoria's Secret panties slightly covering the severed penile area? How quickly exactly did we escalate to that? Well, back in 2005, even the Human Rights Campaign, okay, now the Human Rights Campaign is like the, the equal sign and like the marriage equality, and we have to redefine marriage, okay? And they rate other organizations like the Family Research Council or any conservative Christian institution as horrible, just like the Southern Poverty Law Center. Even the Human Rights Campaign in 2005 insisted on saying birth sex and physical sex. 2005. Let's see. I was 13, I believe. Okay. The super radical left anti-Christian human rights campaign was referring to babies and gender as the same as your sex. Not assigned at birth, but your birth sex and your physical sex. Linking the two together. Wow, what a bunch of cisgender, heteronormative bigots enforcing trans-exclusionary gender stereotypes. Someone needs to report the Human Rights Campaign to the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate list. It's like, what am I trying to tell you? Okay, I'm trying to tell you that the revolution can't keep up with itself. The revolution can't keep up with itself. And that's why some of the foremost voices for secular humanism, secular progressivism, radical feminism have been abandoned by the revolution in its rapid march towards disorder. Okay. Like, you've got major people who, like Joe Rogan, okay, Russell Brand, J.K. Rowling, Naomi Wolf, okay, like crazy former Democrat leftists all saying they're voting for Trump now because they're like, I didn't move here, I didn't change. Who's that like fitness feminist podcaster? Is it Jillian Michaels or something like that? She just had like Matt Chandler on her podcast, okay, to talk about his film Am I Racist? And she's like, I feel like the left just left me. You got the new chick from the Young Turks, which is like the Daily Wire for radical leftists. It's a media publication that just like is like, yeah, we're super crazy left. I forget her name, but she's like, I'm done. I'm leaving the left. Like all these major figures that used to be heroes of the revolution now can't keep up with the revolution because they're not willing to continue applying the new conclusions of the revolutionary premises of the left today. It is a little bit funny to watch, by the way. I think it is sort of funny to see the revolution start to collapse in on itself like a dying star. And that's because it was never about, philosophical or political consistency, right? It was just about chaos. Well, once you're unmoored from any moral guidelines, moral guardrails, any standard for what the true, the good, and the beautiful is, if Margaret Sanger was right and there's no gods and no masters, and I mean, really, you're just electrified sludge that happened to arrange itself coincidentally into what we call consciousness, and one day you'll take a dirt nap, and that's it for you, then yeah, if that's the case, then do whatever the hell you want, okay? Like, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Experiment with tinkering around with human nature and the social fabric. Who cares how many victims you create? If it can be done, it probably should be done. Let's just have fun while we're burning this house to the ground. Like, stop expecting the revolution and the cultural leftist social planners of our current day to be consistent or to make any sense, okay? That's a futile effort. It's not going to happen. But I just want you to see how quickly the revolution moves. It can no longer keep up with itself. And why is this, by the way? like philosophically, this is kind of like interesting. Why is the left continually losing the left? The left is getting smaller and smaller. And by the left, I mean the radical cultural Marxist revolutionaries that are behind whatever new stupid thing is happening in the culture. Okay, whatever the new most insane, retarded thing is that makes you righteously angry and makes you want to scream at your TV, everything is stupid. That's the left. Okay, like listen, I'm no fan of Jillian Michaels. I'm no fan of the Young Turks. Okay, I'm no fan of Joe Rogan. However, they're not pushing forward the revolution anymore. They might share some stupid ideas on their show sometimes, but by and large, a lot of the people who used to identify with the radical left and have now walked away from the radical left, they're spending more of their time criticizing and critiquing whatever new thing the left is up to than they are slamming or bashing Christians. You know, now obviously, I mean, ultimately these people have to meet Jesus, okay, and meet the true source of everything that's good and true and beautiful. But it's interesting how the left, the leftist moderates now spend more time criticizing the radical left than they do bashing Christianity. So many moderates now, with plenty of bad ideas in the culture, they're not even the major threat to what's happening in the culture. It's the radical left that the moderates left. And so the left is literally getting smaller and smaller and smaller in terms of those who are at the breaking edge or the forefront of ushering in whatever new stupid idea is happening in America. So why is that? What is it about leftism that it gets behind every new crazy idea, including surgically genitalia severed men wearing lingerie at the Victoria's Secret runway? What is it about that? Here's why. Here's the answer. Because we are rational beings created in God's image, we tend to work out the logical consequences of our ideas, whether we know it or not. Meaning that there's a certain internal logic to insanity. Now, it doesn't mean that it's good, doesn't mean that it's helpful, but there is an internal logic, right? Like, you understand, like, you can be internally consistent in your logic and still be super evil. Like, Peter Singer, who's one of the foremost defenders of abortion, he defends killing babies after birth. And he's just like, yeah, I mean, he says the liberal search for a morally crucial dividing line between the newborn baby and the fetus has failed to yield any event or stage of development that allows us to kill the unborn but not kill the born. That's what he says. He's just like, everything that disqualifies the unborn from personhood in his criteria for personhood doesn't change after birth. So, like, if you can kill the baby in the womb, you should be able to kill the baby outside the womb. Like, that isn't internally consistent logic. It's just super evil. Okay, so we can't help but sort of unfold or work out the logic of the worldviews that we've imbibed or assumed, because we're rational beings, because our creator is a rational being. So we actually can't help but do that. So we're going quite a bit deeper than I think most, conservative influencer commentary, yell at the camera podcasts go. Like, oh, they're transing the kids, a bunch of weirdos, let's hang them from the public square. Okay, well, sure. Okay. Like, yeah, if you sexually diddle children and show them porn, you should probably have some punishments or penalties for that. But, like, why? Why are they doing that? Why is there a push to lower the age of consent for sex for minors, even from the United Nations? Why is that happening? Why in California are you allowed to help socially transition a minor, possibly get them drugs without parental consent or knowledge if the state determines that the parent might be a mental health risk to the kid if they're not gender affirming? Why is that? Like, we actually have to, like, identify what are the flaws in the ideas and worldviews that the radical left has absorbed that would cause them to follow those premises and assumptions to such heinous, disgusting conclusions. So we went from screw men, we don't need them, to let's let men be women. Awfully quickly, didn't we? So let's help the revolution catch up with itself, shall we? If the revolution can't keep up with itself, let's let those listening and those who might hear this, or those who might listen to you as you take these truths, as you take this episode and share it with others. Let's help the revolution catch up with itself. The crazy sexual revolution did not appear overnight, right? Like, I know it feels like, well, that happened awfully quickly, but it really didn't. Basically, here's an analogy. A bunch of masochists who like to watch the world burn carabined down onto a big dam, and they just started hammering a bunch of cracks into the dam. But there were 50 of them hammering cracks into the dam all over the diameter of this massive dam. And they did it for years. And they were tiny little cracks and no one really noticed it. And it didn't seem all that significant. And there was nothing really that concerning. It's not like anything that they were doing is really affecting our livelihood down in the valley. But actually, most of us couldn't even see the people up there hammering cracks into the dam. And we're just down in the valley where we live in our cute little mountain town, working hard and feeding our children and providing for our families. And then one day, one of those cracks kind of opened up a little bit, and like a lot of water started coming down into the valley. And we thought maybe it was just extra rainfall or snow from up in the mountains. And it didn't really impact that many of us. I mean, there was one person's house right there at the bottom of the dam that got washed away. But the rest of us in the main city were pretty fine. And then one day, all the cracks started opening up and the whole freaking dam broke apart. And the entire community down in the valley was killed. Things happen gradually and then suddenly. And then we're left wondering, so... maybe there was something weird going on up there on the dam, and maybe we should have gone to check it out. That's how ideas work. That's how worldviews work. And when when social revolutionaries who try to tinker with human nature begin cracking the first cracks in the dam, you should identify it, call him out, and get him off the dam. You should stop him from doing that. The problem is, that should have happened in about the 1920s or 30s. And we did not do that successfully as American people, conservatives, Christians. And now here we are in 2024 saying men who sliced off their penises wearing Victoria's Secret panties at a runway model show, that happened really quickly. But no, it actually didn't. So the crazy sexual revolution didn't appear overnight. It was a bunch of weirdos hammering cracks into the dam. And now we're post the falling of the dam breaking apart. But that agenda, I guess, would come from the radical LGBTQ agenda, which denies the difference between men and women, right? I mean, that kind of would be the only agenda you could attribute this insanity to. But I guess, wasn't that really, like, actually enshrined in the redefinition of marriage in that Supreme Court decision called Obergefell v. Hodges, that found a fictional constitutional right to not just sodomy, but to calling that sodomite union a marriage, not just with all the tax benefits of marriage, but with the right to get children and deny them a mother or a father. But wait a second, the premise that men and women are exactly the same and indiscernible and superfluous and can substitute one for the other, and that led to the redefinition of marriage. I guess the belief that men and women are superfluous, I guess that came from feminism. Right. Feminism says men and women are pretty much the same. that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, and that any social norm or social role that a man or a woman has had in antiquity is not biological or natural. It's just societal manufacturing. And so there's really no biological or natural reason or sociological reason for why a father has gone to work and a woman has been a caretaker of the children at home. There's no good reason for that. It's purely coincidental. Or it was an overflow of the patriarchy because men just wanted to keep women under their thumb. That's what feminism said. And so if men and women are indiscernible and superfluous, then they can switch each other out in basically any way. So feminism led to the deterioration of the family, which led to the redefinition of marriage, which now has led to the claim that men can be women. There is an internal logical consistency to that unfolding. And so if you don't like it, if you don't like the final iterations of this worldview, then don't blame Christianity. Find a new worldview. And so I want to encourage the people like J.K. Rowling and like Naomi Wolf and like the chick from the Young Turks. Like, if you don't like some of the final iterations of feminism and of leftism, think deeper about it. I'm grateful that you're not willing to institute some of those final conclusions of the feminism that you imbibed. I'm grateful for that. Believe me, I want more moderate leftists leaving the radical left. But you can't blame conservatism or Christianity for the insanity that has you so concerned. That's a product of your own worldview. There's a consistency to it. So if you don't like the conclusion of your worldview, go back to your premises and find where the problem was. Because each premise led pretty systematically and consistently into the next premise. And now you're looking at the conclusion, transgenderism. Dudes who sliced off their penis competing in women's sports against you and showering naked next to you because the dude probably gets sexually aroused from picturing himself to be a woman. If you don't like that, go revisit some of your premises. I'll do it with you. Let's find the flaws and the problems. We do need to think deeper about the ideas that have created this very, very, very stupid culture. Oh, and by the way, we're not in the final iterations yet. You think this Victoria's Secret panties covering your penile severed area is the final iteration? Oh, it's not. It's not. Okay? And by the way, what I'm going to tell you where it goes next, and you're going to be disgusted, and some of you are going to be tempted to say, Seth, it surely has to stop before that you just said, because that's too crazy. That's too far. How many times are we going to continue to say that about what's happening in our country? That thing, that's too far. That'll never happen. Okay, like, our conservative political philosophers and pundits of the 50s and 60s were told the same thing when they said, I think the way these ideas are going, that they might institute no-fault divorce laws and just make it super easy to leave your spouse. I think eventually they might redefine marriage because that's kind of where these things are going. Our conservative forebears were told, oh, you're a weirdo, tin hat wearing, conspiracy theory, sensationalist rhetoric, not going to happen. Like, how many times do we have to keep saying that before we realize there's actually no end to their political project? So, okay, if the sexual revolution didn't appear overnight and feminism led to the breakdown of the family because it claimed that men and women are superfluous, indiscernible, replaceable, nothing unique that they bring to the table in parenthood or in a marriage. And that led to the redefinition of marriage. And the redefinition of marriage led to men can be women because we're basically the same anyways. What's next? What's next, of course, is that the LGBTQ LMNOPIA My Name is Legion movement are going to call to treat pedophiles as a protected class and add the letter P to the alphabet mafia, and then explicitly call for eliminating the age of consent to sex. That's what's happening next. Some of that's already here, actually, and you're seeing the early seeds of that. One example of this is that we're being told that we're no longer supposed to use the word pedophile, but we should use the word minor attracted persons, MAPS. Another example of this is that the UN, about a year and a half ago, literally floated the idea, and you can go back to the show and you can find the old episodes. We've talked about this, that we need to consider that the age of consent could be 11 or 12. Now, they say, well, it might not be acknowledged in law, but consent could still be legitimate as young as 11 or 12. Oh, and they're saying we know that legally that's not the case, but consent could still be legitimate even if it's not legal. What? Like that's already happening. The early seeds of that is already happening, guys. Scott Wiener, the Democrat congressman and lawmaker in California, appropriately named, he has co-authored legislation that's been signed into law by Gavin Newsom, such that if a 22-year-old had sex with a 12-year-old, the 22-year-old would not have to automatically register on the sex offender list, because if it's a 10-year gap or less, then you're fine. And this was allegedly done to prevent discrimination against minor attracted persons. Pedophiles, okay? Like, I just gave you some examples of how this is unfolding already. There's also an internal logical consistency to what I just said is happening and will happen. In the next few years, the revolution will ask to make pedophiles a protected class, but they won't want to call them pedophiles because that's discriminatory, I guess, is what they tell us. It's going to be minor attracted persons, or they'll come up with some other euphemism. If gender identity is distinct from our body, and female identity can be trapped in a male chromosomed body, or vice versa, then there's no reason why we should hinder minors from exploring their gender identity. But if gender identity can be separate from your physical body, and you can identify as the opposite sex, then that assumes that a minor has a sexual identity from their early years, such that we could encourage or bless the sexual gender exploring of a kid who Sam thinks he might be Sally. So to even talk about transgender youth is to project or assume a sexual identity onto children. And I thought we had a phrase for people who assume or project a sexual identity onto minors, groomers and pedophiles. So the entire logic of transgenderism inevitably and logically leads to the sexualization of minors, of children. I saw a shirt that someone was wearing at an ice cream shop when I was in Vermont last year. I was speaking at a church, and I went to the downtown area, and I was actually with my son, and it was probably good he was there with me, because I was about to rip this ice cream salesperson a new one. And this, I think it was a woman, was wearing a shirt that said, "Protect trans kids." Have you seen this shirt? Actually, we'll probably put it right here on the screen. Have you seen this shirt? I've seen it all over the place since then. Protect trans kids. And this is a phrase now that, like, the Democrat Party uses. Protect trans kids? So minors, children, can be trans. That's literally the proof and example of what I just told you. If minors, children, can be trans, that assumes that children have a sophisticated enough sexual identity to be able to differentiate between the sexes or the genders. That is to project a sexual identity onto minors. If you ever use the phrase trans kids, I'm just going to assume a priori you're a groomer. I'm going to assume a priori that you're a threat to children. And we should. And those people should be ostracized. Those people should be treated like scum. It's very important to have taboos in a society. Like, yes, being a groomer and speaking sexually about children should be so taboo that you might fear getting the snot beat out of you. Like, that's why we should have laws against this stuff too. Hey, you want to try to do this to kids? Yeah, then you're probably going to go to jail for life. You touch the kid or you have sexually charged conversations with a minor about their gender identity, you get thrown in jail, okay? Like, that should be taboo. So that's how the internal logic, the unfolding logic of feminism goes all the way, not just to transgenderism, but ultimately to the sexualization of minors. If our gender identity is our authentic self and our body doesn't reflect our authentic self, why prohibit a minor from pursuing their gender liberation? If a boy can be a girl or a man can be a woman, and that statement is true, and that's somehow possible, then that would be true for all people regardless of their age. That's how feminism led to the breakdown of the family, led to the redefinition of marriage, led to two men being able to call themselves married, get children and deny them a mother, led to transgenderism. Men are not and women are not just superfluous. Men can become women. So why not let a minor identify as the other sex as well and project a sexual identity onto minors? Now, you might disagree with me. So, comment on the video, letting me know where I went wrong in my logic. I think it flows pretty consistently into each new iteration of our unfolding stupid culture. And it doesn't matter that there are endless contradictions to the transgender worldview or ideology. Remember, I told you at the top of the show, don't expect internal consistency. Don't expect it to make sense. But if you understand the bad assumptions and premises, then you can kind of see how they flow into the next thing. Okay? Like, this is why ideology is a hell of a drug. Okay? Ideology will take you further than you wanted to go and make you pay more than you wanted to pay. Here are some of the contradictions of transgenderism, just to end the show with a little bit of chuckling and laughing, because it's not fun to dwell in the mental space of Victoria's Secret panties covering your severed penile area. So why don't we poke some holes a little bit now and have a little bit of laughs before we end the show today. So the transgender movement claims that the authentic self is something other than the physical body in a sort of progressive Gnostic dualism. But they also embrace a secular materialist philosophy that claims that the material world is the only thing that exists. They claim gender is a social construct, but simultaneously argue that a person can be trapped in the wrong gender. Well, wait a second. If it's a social construct, why don't you just change it whatever you want? Well, oh no, you're not supposed to ask those questions. Wait, they say there are no meaningful differences between men and women. But hilariously, they still rely on sex stereotypes to argue that gender identity is real. Because when a dude acts more female and wants to dress as a female, they assume that he must have a female gender identity. But I thought that there were no meaningful differences between men and women in the first place. So maybe he just wants to wear a dress because that's his truth, and there's nothing societal or stereotypical about that. I'm so confused. They claim that truth is whatever a person says it is, yet they believe there's a real self somewhere inside to be discovered inside that person. I'm getting really confused here. The transgender movement wants the authority of science to make fundamentally metaphysical claims, But then they claim that science reveals gender identity to be innate and unchanging. And then on the other hand, they deny that biology is destiny, insisting that people are free to be whoever they want to be. They promote a radical individualism, that people are free to do whatever they want because it's their truth. But they simultaneously ruthlessly enforce the acceptance of transgender ideology on expressive free individuals that reject the ideology of transgenderism. If gender identity is distinct from sex and your body, so that a woman can be trapped in a man's body or a male body, then why does the transgender movement insist on surgical intervention to support said gender identity? If having a penis doesn't prevent you from identifying as a woman, then chopping it off won't make your identity any more real, since your body isn't the real you anyways. But wait, either the entire LGBT mafia is right and gender and sex are distinct, in which case surgical intervention is pointless, or gender and sex are the same thing and the entire transgender ideology is a lie. Oh, my brain really hurts right now. I feel like the woman in the meme with all the math equations floating across the screen. Maybe we'll leave it there for today. Why don't you go out and ask these questions of people in your life, at your school, at your small group, at your woke church, at your workplace, and get people to think a little bit deeper about how this very stupid culture has unfolded to the point that two dudes could slice off their family jewels entirely, construct a vaginoplasty fake vagina where their penis used to be, put on Victoria's Secret panties, and strut like, interestingly, in female sexually aroused stereotypical mannerisms, which I thought that was all socially contrived anyways. Interesting. And wear woman face as they're cosplaying so they can be sexually aroused at a fashion show. Everything is stupid because ideas have consequences and bad ideas have victims. Thanks for joining the show today. Head on over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Give the show a rating and review. Let us know what you think. Go to Rumble and hit subscribe, because YouTube, owned by Google, doesn't really like this show, doesn't really like these kinds of comments on their platform. If we ever get digitally assassinated, we need your help. Head on over to thewhiterose.life and become an ally of the White Rose Resistance, okay? You just sign up. You're $35 or $70 a month. You get your battle box in the mail, join our digital community online. And then $70 a month, you join our book club. It's called Air Support. At $70 a month, and you join our Books in the Barracks book club, and we meet together, we hang out, we talk about the books we're reading with White Rose and myself live on Zoom. It's super, super fun. And anyone that becomes an ally or greater of the White Rose Resistance, you get free tickets to Life or Death Con in Washington, D.C. on January 23rd in downtown D.C., the day before the March for Life, with Eric Metaxas and Allie Beth Stuckey and Pastor Andrew Cedra and Dr. George Grant and Victoria Robinson and AJ Hurley and Jaco Buyens and Dr. Nancy Piercy. It's going to be an incredible, incredible day. Go to lifeordeathcon.com, the White Rose Resistance Conference, lifeordeathcon.com, and join us in Washington, D.C. in January. Thank you for being an ally and supporter of this show. Make sure you pick up a book, The 1916 Project, and host a screening at your church as it's touring all around the country, so that these kinds of ideas are recognized as fundamentally theological and demonic by the church, and we can wake up the church to rebuild Christian resistance in America before it's too late. Thank you for joining the show today. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.